Well, I'm Scott Brady with Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and I am here at the Land Rover Experience at the Biltmore in North Carolina, and I'm here with a very special vehicle, the Defender 130. So this is one of the most appropriate platforms for overland travel within the Land Rover lineup. It's got a 119-inch wheelbase, but it's 13 inches longer in the back for additional capacity for backcountry travel. What makes this vehicle interesting is the fact that it has the same 119-inch wheelbase as the Defender 110, but they've added an additional 13 plus inches aft of the rear axle. So the Defender 130 is really designed for carrying additional equipment or additional people, and it's a welcome addition to the full-size SUV segment. First drive here of the Defender 130. Spent a lot of time in the 110. Including crossing Namibia. I've driven it on a few continents, and so far the thing that I'm noticing just observationally is that the additional weight in the rear is actually keeping the vehicle a little more neutral, a little bit more stable in cross-axle terrain. It's a lot less likely to pop in the rear from the front weight biasing of the drivetrain. So I'm noticing on the really extreme cross-axle obstacles that the vehicle is very gently coming up in the rear, or even doing a little bit of a nose lift, which is fairly unusual for this platform. So overall, I think that the weight distribution, the weight balance change has been a positive thing in technical terrain. Of course, the departure angle is always a consideration, and it's something that we're looking at with the 130, as all of the additional length comes aft of the rear tires. So the wheelbase is exactly the same as the Defender 110. So far, it has not been affected on the terrain that we've been traveling. But there is one thing of note. You can tell that the exhaust position has changed slightly, and it's actually gotten a little more upright. So as a result, the corners of that exhaust are the lowest point in the rear, so the most likely to come in contact with the terrain should we come down on a rock or a ledge, for example. Now, of course, an exhaust getting a dent isn't going to keep you from getting home. It just might either be a cosmetic consideration, or if it needs to be replaced, it's a fairly expensive part. And the first thought is, how do we skid plate that? But the problem with adding a skid plate is it either retains heat or you actually lose additional ground clearance because of the skid plate itself. So I would probably be inclined just to leave it as it is. But that is one thing of note compared to the 110, fairly significant change in departure angle. The departure angle for this vehicle is going to be at 27 degrees, which is going to be just fine, but not as good as the Defender 110. All right, so we're going down a fairly steep descent. We're having some fun watching the vehicle in front of us. They got a pretty hard lock to the right as they're sliding downhill. It's such an important thing to remember as a driver, is to keep an eye on actually the logo in the center of the wheel, because that gives you a sense for the position of the wheel in lock. And we're going to be really inclined when the vehicle starts to slide to oversteer, which will cause the vehicle actually to understeer. So we're coming down this fairly steep section here. We want it to go a little bit slower than it would go under hill descent control. So I'm actually using left foot braking. And still, compared to the 110, they've done a better job. The very first models of the 110 that we tested, left foot braking, there was a lot of sensitivity on the brake, so not the traditional Land Rover long pedal travel, so fairly sensitive under left foot braking, but the 130 is a little bit better, so I'm noticing that I've got better modulation, better control under left foot braking, a lot more sensitivity, but not overly sensitive to the input. So I've got a little more pedal travel out of the brake to kind of be nuanced as we come through these obstacles. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the hardware that the Defender 130 has. There's just a bunch of off-road goodies that are available in these models. This particular one that I'm driving only has the center differential lock. It does not have the factory available rear differential lock. That is a nice feature. It's an electronically controlled locker. You can actually go through the menus and engage that locker via menu selection. But it does a great job of engaging it on its own. One of the advantages of it engaging and disengaging so easily is that you end up with a lot better side slope control because the locker's not engaged all the time, so you're less likely to slide down a slope. The advanced traction control from Land Rover is always excellent. It's one of the class-leading systems that we've evaluated, so very quick intervention when you're in low range and in one of the mud and ruts, for example, that we're in right now. So fairly quick intervention of traction control so you don't get a lot of wheel spin. That does two things. It gives the driver a lot of confidence because the vehicle's not spinning wheels, but it also is much more gentle on the terrain, on the trail. So we always want to be using the technology that's available to us to minimize trail damage so we can keep these trails that we enjoy open. Then it also has the airbag suspension system. You cannot get the 130 currently in a coiled version, so it's airbag only, which means that you've got multi-mode airbag suspension system. I have it in the off-road mode right now, which is giving us a lot more ground clearance, yet the vehicle still remains very stable and sure-footed. And this gives us a sense for the overall vehicle balance, which translates to driver confidence. It also gives us a sense for how the vehicle is weighted, and this is where we're going to get a better sense for that additional weight over the rear on the 130. So I'm noticing that when it came up, very gentle coming up, and when the vehicle settled back down, very gentle. So we got a front tire in the air right now. I'm probably at about 15, 16 degrees. But again, just very gentle coming up. We're not getting any of that pop out of the vehicle. Overall, very, very stable.